The room was silent, but his heart was anything but. Arham sat on the edge of his bed, staring blankly at the cracked ceiling above him. To the world outside, he was just another man living an ordinary life, but inside, he carried storms no one could see. His chest felt heavy, as if every betrayal, every failure, every unspoken fear had carved a wound deep within him. He remembered the people he once trusted, their smiles, their promises, their words that once felt like truth. All of it had turned into shards of broken glass, cutting him whenever he tried to recall the warmth he once believed in. Friends who left without explanation, dreams that slipped through his fingers, and a love that ended without closure. It was as if life had taken every chance to remind him that he wasn't enough. Some nights, Arham fought himself more than he fought the world. He would stand before the mirror, looking at a face he barely recognized. The dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights, the kind where silence was too loud and memories refused to rest. He asked himself again and again, why me? Why do I carry so much pain when all I ever wanted was peace? But no answer ever came. Arham had grown used to hiding. In front of people, he wore a mask so perfect that no one noticed the cracks. He laughed at jokes he didn't find funny, nodded to conversations he wasn't really part of, and said, "I'm fine," whenever someone asked how he was doing. Deep down, though, he felt invisible, as if he could disappear tomorrow and the world wouldn't pause for even a second. One rainy evening, sitting by the window, he whispered to himself, maybe this is it. Maybe life is just about surviving pain. The raindrops slid down the glass, mirroring the tears that escaped his tired eyes. He wanted to believe there was more, that beyond the shadows there was light waiting, but his heart was too weary to hope. The hardest battle was not with the people who hurt him, it was with himself. His mind replayed every failure, every word of rejection, every moment of weakness. He wanted to escape, but how do you run from the echo of your own thoughts? And yet, despite it all, he was still here. Broken, yes, but breathing. Wounded, but alive. There was something inside him, a tiny, fragile ember, that refused to go out completely. He didn't call it hope, not yet. But it was there, buried beneath the rubble of his pain, waiting for the day he would see it clearly. As he lay down that night, Arham closed his eyes with the heaviness of someone who had fought too many battles and lost most of them. But in the corner of his soul, something whispered, this is not the end. The world may have broken him, but deep inside, the story of his heart was still being written. The next morning arrived like every other, gray, heavy, and dull. Arham dragged himself out of bed, his body moving out of habit rather than will. The world outside his window was awake, buzzing with life, but he felt like a shadow, detached from everything that made life vibrant. Work, conversations, responsibilities, he performed them all like a machine, without heart, without meaning. But sometimes, change does not come with thunder or lightning. Sometimes, it arrives quietly. That day, as he walked aimlessly through the crowded bazaar, his eyes fell upon a small bookshop tucked between two noisy stalls. It looked out of place, almost invisible, but something about it pulled him closer. He stepped inside, greeted by the warm, faint scent of old paper and ink. The world outside was loud, but in here, silence had a voice of its own. Arham ran his fingers across the spines of countless books. He wasn't searching for anything in particular, yet one thin, worn-out journal caught his eye. Its cover was plain, but the title, written in faded letters, said, "Even the darkest night ends." Something about it made him pause. He opened the book, and on the very first page, a handwritten note stared back at him. To the one who feels lost, remember, even broken wings can still fly. Don't give up. Arham froze. His throat tightened, and for the first time in months, he felt something stir inside him. He didn't know who had written it, or why it was there, but those words pierced through the fog in his chest. They felt as though they were meant for him, as though someone out there knew his silent suffering. He bought the journal, carrying it home like it was a fragile treasure. That night, he opened it again. Page after page, he found words of encouragement, quotes, scribbled thoughts, poems about pain and healing. Some pages were smudged with ink, as if someone had written them with trembling hands. For the first time, Arham didn't feel completely alone. He realized that someone else, too, had known what it felt like to drown and had chosen to fight. The change was small, almost invisible, but it was real. The shadows in his heart were still there, heavy and overwhelming, but there was now a flicker, like the faint glow of a candle in a dark room. It wasn't strong enough to light everything, but it was enough to remind him that darkness was not all that existed. Days passed, and Arham found himself returning to that journal every night. He would read a line, close his eyes, and let the words echo in his mind. Sometimes he cried, sometimes he just sat in silence, but always, he felt a little lighter afterward. One evening, as he stared at the page that read, "Healing is not about forgetting, it's about learning to live with the scars," he whispered to himself, "Maybe I can try." He didn't know what trying meant yet. He didn't know how to fix the cracks in his heart or silence the voices in his head. But he knew he didn't want to give up anymore. Not completely. The night was still long, but somewhere in the distance, dawn was waiting. The journal had become Arham's silent companion. Each night, he read its pages under the dim light of his lamp, and though the words did not erase his pain, they softened its edges. Yet, hope is never a straight path. Healing is not a doorway you simply walk through, it is a maze, full of turns, dead ends, and mirrors that force you to confront yourself. And Arham was beginning to confront parts of himself he had long tried to bury. One evening, as he stared into the mirror, he didn't just see his tired face. He saw the shadows of his past, faces of those who had betrayed him, the haunting memory of promises broken, the echo of his own mistakes. His chest tightened as the voice inside his head whispered cruelly, "You will never be enough. No matter how much you try, you'll always be broken." He shut his eyes, gripping the edge of the sink, his knuckles turning white. The battle wasn't against the world anymore, it was against his own mind. Every step forward felt like dragging his feet through chains of doubt. The next morning, he carried the journal with him to a nearby park. He sat on a worn-out bench beneath a tree, trying to let the sunlight touch him. Children's laughter filled the air, birds sang freely, and yet, inside, he felt heavy. He opened the journal to a page that read, "Scars are proof that you fought, not that you lost." He wanted to believe it. Truly, he did, but his thoughts were quick to argue, "What have you won? You are still alone. You are still broken." It was a war, a relentless back and forth between despair and hope. Some days, the darkness inside him won. He would lie in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling, his chest hollow, his body numb. Other days, he managed to rise, read a page, take a walk, breathe deeply, and tell himself he was still alive. One particular night, the weight of his memories became unbearable. He sat at his desk, opened the journal, and for the first time, decided to write. His hands trembled as he scribbled. "I am tired. I am lost. But if someone before me could write words of hope, maybe I can, too. Even if they are weak, even if they are broken, they are mine." Tears blurred his vision, but he kept writing. It wasn't poetry, nor wisdom, it was raw pain poured onto paper. And yet, when he finished, he felt a strange release. For the first time, he wasn't just consuming hope, he was creating it, even if only for himself. The battle within continued. He still had nights where nightmares consumed him, mornings where he questioned his worth, and moments where he almost gave up. But now, there were also nights where he wrote his feelings down instead of drowning in them, mornings where he remembered a line from the journal, and moments where he allowed himself to believe, just a little, that he wasn't beyond repair. Healing was not a straight line, and Arham was beginning to accept that. He wasn't cured, and maybe he wouldn't be for a long time. But he was fighting, and that in itself was a kind of victory. As he closed the journal one evening, he whispered to himself, "I am broken, yes. But I am also alive. And maybe, just maybe, that means there is still a chance." The war inside him had not ended. But for the first time, he realized it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about continuing to fight, no matter how many times he fell. The weeks slowly turned into months, and though Arham's scars remained, something inside him had shifted. The journal was no longer just a book, it had become a bridge between his brokenness and his search for meaning. Through it, he had learned that hope wasn't about forgetting pain, it was about learning to carry it without letting it drown you. One morning, he sat at the same park bench where he often read. The sun was warmer than usual, spilling golden light across the grass. A young boy sat a few feet away, clutching a kite with broken strings. The boy's face was tight with frustration, his small hands trembling as he tried to tie the torn paper back together. After a few failed attempts, he threw the kite aside, crossing his arms in defeat. Arham watched quietly, feeling an echo of himself in that child. For a moment, he hesitated, he was used to being invisible, to keeping to himself. But something inside nudged him forward. He picked up the kite, smiled gently, and said, "You know, sometimes things don't fly right away. But if you're patient, they can still rise. The boy looked up, his eyes wide, and together they worked on fixing the kite. It wasn't perfect, but when the boy ran with it across the grass, it lifted into the air, wobbling yet soaring. The boy's laughter rang out like music, and Arham felt something he hadn't in a long time, a sense of connection. That small moment stayed with him. It reminded him that healing was not just for himself. Perhaps the pain he had endured, the lessons he had slowly gathered, could mean something to others, too. He began to write more often in the journal, not only his own pain, but words he wished someone had told him when he was at his lowest. Lines like, "Your worth is not defined by those who left you. Even in darkness, your heartbeat means you are still fighting." One evening, sitting in the bookshop where he had first found the journal, he met the shopkeeper, an older man with kind eyes. They spoke casually at first, about books and weather, but eventually, Arham shared a little of his story. To his surprise, the man listened without judgment. When Arham paused, the man simply said, "It takes courage to keep breathing when your heart feels shattered. That courage, my son, is hope in disguise." Those words struck him deeply. For so long, he had seen himself as weak, fragile, broken. But maybe, just maybe, the act of surviving was strength after all. Arham began noticing others more: the tired woman on the bus, the old man sitting alone on a bench, the quiet student reading in the corner of the library. He realized he was not the only one fighting unseen battles. And when he could, in small ways, he offered kindness, a smile, a word, a helping hand. He wasn't fully healed, not yet. Some nights, the weight of the past still pressed heavily on his chest. But now, he no longer drowned in silence. He was learning to reach for the light, even if only a flicker at a time. As he stood one evening beneath the fading sunset, he whispered to himself, "Maybe hope isn't something you wait for. Maybe it's something you create, for yourself, and for others." And for the first time, the horizon did not look endless and empty. It looked like a beginning.